Grabbing from whatever. I was using Kidspiration and Inspiration and Co-Writer, and I was using a lot of kind of ed techy creative stuff, kind of in unusual ways. Just one of the things that I'm well known for is I'm kind of the idea person. I can look at a tool and say, oh, you know what I could do with this? And generally what I come out with is something that nobody else has really thought about.
Right. It's a fresh
Unique,
perspective.
but
Yeah, a fresh, unique perspective.
but usually I think the benefit is that it's often that I'm focused on engaging that individual.
Mm-hmm.
And because my focus is on engaging them and connecting with them, I feel like it's always served me well.
Okay. Did it come from kind of a place when you start and you don't, you're ignorant of something because you just don't know enough about it. So you see a device and you think, without knowing too much about it, it's like you put your perspective on it and your interpretation of how it could be used, and that without being biased too much by what it's defined as, that you're able to kind of create new ways of using it.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how it fit for you?
I think that's part of it. And I
Hmm.
think the other part of it is having so much experience in the AAC space and in the school space that I am acutely aware of a lot of the challenges that exist with the way things are or have been being done. And I'm always looking for, kind of new ways to tweak things to, engage people more and
Yes.
get them communicating.
Right. And so then that becomes a way of using your creativity to reinterpret things sometimes in order to be able to get people maybe better access and interest, right? Interest level is huge, especially when you're dealing with kids
It's
with disabilities,
everything.
right? It's the whole, it's the game.
And it's something that I've been presenting about even more in the last couple of years. Um, Without it, I don't think we're getting very far with anything.
Right. Because I think we can trick ourselves or delude ourselves by not realizing how much maybe we're acting on the child's behalf when trying to get them to do something. So if they're incapable, maybe we end up interjecting a little bit too much, and that gets
We're a
misinterpreted
lot.
as their understand or a lot, exactly, that they're grasping something and we move on, whereas we're leaving them behind and getting further and further away from what they're
And
able to do.
we're not developing the autonomy that they need to be able to want to do those things independently going forward.
Right. And that's where the creativity and the patience comes in, because we have to understand that it's time, it takes time, and with everybody's different, right? And some kids are going to take a lot longer than other kids, and we have to know who that child is as opposed to bringing ourselves to that all the time, right?
Yep. Sometimes
Yeah,
it's a long time.
a long time. That's right. And you really have to leave that ego aside, and it's so important. And I think the kids get that and they appreciate that, because I would imagine, I mean, not being one of those kids, but at some point, the frustration level of being pushed to do things when you're incapable of it, or you're just not getting it, and I can't communicate to you that I'm not getting it,
Or don't want to.
Right,
That's the
sure.
big, I think that's one of the biggest issues is that's what's really been standing out to me in the last couple of years is that
Yeah.
way too often when I go in, if I'm called in to consult and I go in and I observe kind of what the lesson looks like or what the session looks like, that invariably what I am watching is entirely adult led
Right.
with expectation that a student kind of comply. And I don't mean that meanly. I mean, we this is kind of where education has taken us.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes.
but that's not how to get people to want to do things. And if our ultimate goal is to get an individual to want to communicate, to do things that are, requiring them to do so, is probably a good way to get it to go the other way, and want them to not use that
Absolutely.
technology.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So someone like you using your creativity to be able to find ways to engage, that's what we need more of. We need people to be able to look at a device and look at it as more than a tool, right? We need to be able to look at how kids can integrate it into their lives as part of themselves, part of who they
I
are.
have been a full-time augmentative communication consultant since 2008.
Okay.
I'm a speech pathologist, and I would go in and I would model therapy, and I worked with SLPs, and I worked with them with their students, but I didn't have my own caseload anymore.
Okay.
And when COVID came, things happened, and I ended up getting a student who was a caseload student,
Mhm.
and it changed everything for me.
You came
So
back all these years later.
it was so much clearer, the things that were happening where it was being said that she couldn't do something. I was realizing, well, why can't she? I think there were so many things that were, I think, dictated by attitudes of everybody. I mean, we're talking every professional, doctor, parent, um, that proliferate, and they can stop progress in its tracks when, like, for this young woman, my Morgan, love my Morgan. She came she came from another state, and she moved into a school district and was going to go into a classroom, but then COVID ramped up again, and mom was like,
Yeah.
and which was, smart. It
Right.
In life skills type, in classrooms, COVID was a real problem, because it's difficult to teach all the, the safety kinds of precautions. So mom decided to keep her home, and I ended up seeing her. I had been assigned as her AAC consultant, but then ended up seeing her as the speech therapist. So she was 19 years old, and she came she had some natural speech, some single words, some kind of idiosyncratic signs, eat, and
Right. More and things
she
like that.
did not have symbolic communication using an AAC system, even though it had been tried in the past, but it hadn't really been successful. And watching that process from the beginning, and viewing everybody's roles in that process. So viewing the OT, the teacher, the family, like all of that, I feel like that experience kind of smacked me in the face with, you know what, you weren't getting this right. You're missing something. And because the student, the young lady that I know now, she's very different than anybody would have thought, because she communicates now, and she believes that she is a valid communicator. She's this vibrant, funny, she's absolutely just 100% joy for me. um but a lot of the things that she can do were not on the table as even possibilities, because nobody, if you don't have the language to do something, for example, um many students with complex needs may not learn to be independently potty trained or, use the
Right.
restroom by themselves.
Right.
But if you think about it, if you don't have the language to be able to even identify, I have to go to the bathroom, or so if you're not being taught that language and being given an alternative mode, how are you going to then successfully be able to support yourself in that
Yes.
responsibility?
Sure.
So, what I saw was a young woman who's at 19 started with, minimal communication, and um she has just she's completely blossomed
Hmm.
as a human. And then I saw the effect it had on her family,
Which must have
which is,
been just
it's almost
joy.
like you're helping to give them a new child, because
Sure. The
even though
joy
they
must,
had that child all along, all of the information they had been given
yeah.
was not really leading them to provide all the right kinds of support and interaction.
Yes. And did you find, was this an example of approaching it from your new perspective of connecting with the person and developing the relationship first, and then this progress grew out of that?
Completely. Um, Both with her and her family. Um, I needed I needed to build a relationship with her and her family. Um, I think that it's very easy for us as SLPs or teachers or whoever to fall into the expert role. And I think
Mhm.
the expert
Yeah.
role needs to be ditched because it
Yeah.
causes a lot of trouble
Yeah.
on
I
both sides.
I
The
agree.
the expert thinks like, "Hey, I know best. Why aren't you listening to me?" And it changes the way, even if you're not negative about it, it
Yeah.
still changes the way we look at interacting with people that we're supporting.
Right. Right. There's a
Um,
certain bias built in immediately. Right.
yeah, so I think that that's important to kind of ditch, is that,
Hmm.
hey, I'm the expert and I know best how to, I mean, yes, I am very educated in
Yeah.
terms of augmentative communication and best practices and what works and what doesn't. But if I discount or ignore the feelings of the family or the OT or the SLP, it's no different than discounting, than not connecting with the learner. Like
Hmm.
it's going to do the same thing. And I've definitely done that plenty in my career.